Hey, it's JP from the Junkies. Football season is finally back, and BetQL is ready to help you win more consistently this year. BetQL is an absolute game changer if you're looking to find trends to help you win. Make smarter bets on spreads, totals, player props, and more. BetQL has already helped over 300,000 people with powerful analytics and community insights. Don't fumble away your cash this football season. Visit BetQL.com for their free daily analysis today. That's BetQL.com.
Al Petrelli joins us from Trans Siberian Orchestra. They're headed to Wichita in December for their holiday show. Hello, Al.
How you doing, my friend? How you been?
Oh, we're good. We're always happy to have you with us. It's amazing what you guys continue to do year after year. So just tell us about that aspect of this, the longevity of Trans Siberian Orchestra and the overwhelming success this band has had for many years.
Oh, God. Well, it's approaching 3 decades now. It's 28 years since this thing first opened its eyes. I think that part of the reason for the longevity is the stories that Paul O'Neill had written. I think that the folks in your community and some of the other communities really relate to the stories. You know, I read an interesting quote the other day by Leonard Bernstein, and he said that, you know, a true artist, a great composer, his work becomes very, very accessible, but it's never ordinary. And I found that to be really, really important. And I read it a couple times, and I think that sums up Paul O'Neill's work in one phrase. You know, everybody understands the story. It's very accessible to people from, you know, young ages right through older folks, you know. But there's nothing ordinary about that. There's nothing ordinary about his work, his music, his story, and the show. And I think that every year, you know, we try to do better than the previous year. And the folks that come back every year to see us year after year, I consider them our repeat offenders. You know, they see it getting better. They see it growing up like one of their children. And I think they have a vested interest in it, and they feel like it's part of them. It's certainly part of their holiday tradition.
You know, you're obviously a very talented guitarist. You know, you could probably be involved in any project you wanted to be involved in. What do you get creatively, personally, professionally, artistically from and through Trans Siberian Orchestra that you don't get anywhere else?
I think it's all encompassing musically, you know, and that's the best part of it. I never get bored. 1 minute I'm playing a Mozart symphony on the guitar. The next minute, you know, I'm playing some ragtime Leon Russell style boogie piano thing on piano. I get to, you know, be a guitar player and shred on occasion. But I think more importantly, you know, one of the things that Paul would constantly tell me is that at the end of the lyric, my responsibility is to carry on the statement and the story that Paul was telling. And to do that instrumentally is a little bit more difficult. And that really allowed me to dig deeper into my entire musical education and just find ways of being expressive in context of Paul's work, almost like how you would score a film, And so I really, you know, I don't get too jammed up in any one particular style. If I'm not playing electric guitar, I'm playing acoustic, I'm playing classical guitar. I get to do it all under the heading of the Trans Siberian Orchestra, which is really a lot of fun for me.
Al Petrelli, our guest, Trans Siberian Orchestra here in Wichita in Trust Bank Arena, coming up on December the 6th. You've been doing this a long time. You played in Alice Cooper's band. You were a member of Megadeth. My goodness, did you ever envision a time in those early years that you'd be doing with a band that was so synonymous, even though it's a rock and roll group, so synonymous with Christmas, Al?
Never in a million years, my friend. You know, I couldn't have scripted this. If you would have told me this story 30 years ago, I would have been like, you know. I knew that my always pursuit of learning more, always wanting to grow as an artist, always, you know, there's so much more work I have to do as a musician. I constantly want to get better, you know, and in retrospect, I looked at my tenure with Alice Cooper as like part of my education that was getting me ready for Paul O'Neill. The time I spent with Dave Mustaine and Megadeth was getting me ready for my time spent with Paul O'Neill. You know, everything I've really ever done, even like playing the trumpet in the third grade band in the elementary school, you know, somehow was getting me ready for this situation that presented itself in 1995.
Is it the logistic part of the tour or the creative part of the tour that comes first when planning? Do you book arenas and get every musician, you know, on board and everything like that, or is it planning the show itself and knowing exactly how it's going to look and feel?
I think a little bit of both. I mean, right now, the O'Neill family and our management team is already booking, they're putting holds on buildings for the 2024 tour. So this thing, it takes a long time to get it up and running. And then, the task at hand for me is to make sure that this tour is musically as perfect as it can be and better than last year. And then, the first 2 weeks of January, everybody will kind of exhale a little bit, take a break, and then immediately jump back into meetings and conferences. Now what do we do? So the band has been intact. I'd say like 95% of the folks in the band have been with me for, 20-something years now. So I don't like messing up a good chemistry. It's like having, a dynasty football team. Don't break it. Don't mess with it. This works, and it works really, really well. And they're constantly, growing and getting better as players, not only individually, but collectively as an ensemble. And that's priceless.
Yeah, if you go see Trans Siberian Orchestra, you're seeing a style of music that you don't see that often. It's a potpourri. I want to ask you kind of a theoretical, philosophical question. My son and I are both fans of the Eagles. Okay, they're on their final goodbye tour or whatever they're calling it.
Long goodbye.
Long goodbye. They're playing the hits, but they're not stepping outside of their comfort zone at all. That's something you do all the time. They're just playing the hits. They're doing what the fans want, but there's some pushback in their fan base about this is the last time we might see you. Why don't you do something a little bit off the beaten path? You see what we're saying, and do you kind of see their side of it too?
Well, I can't comment on the Eagles because I haven't, seen any of the shows on this tour. I've been a huge fan of all of their entire catalog since I was a kid. For me personally, I would rather stay in a perpetual state of discomfort at all times because that means I'm growing or I'm learning or I'm doing something that I'm not really comfortable with, And I've always felt that if you're uncomfortable, you're growing. For me, if I'm comfortable, I'm not really doing anything that's breaking any new ground, and I still have a long journey ahead of me as an artist and as a musician, and as a man, as a father, in every way.
But you wouldn't, Al. I don't know you obviously, but I know enough about you and Trans Siberian Orchestra. You guys change it up as much as any band out there, and that's part of your living, breathing, right? I mean, that's
every year it's got to be different. Yeah, we have to. Again, staying uncomfortable. If we did the same exact thing every year without changing it, regardless on if I could pull it off or not, I wanted to do that, the audience would know it. It may not be tangible. They may not put their finger on it and say, oh, well, this is exactly the same thing from last year, whatever. They'll just know it's not that excitement, that immediacy of like, this is a live arena rock and roll band, And there's a certain energy that exists in that portion of the universe that just makes it special and different and uncomfortable every time. And uncomfortable in a positive definition of it, not the wrong sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Use that word I was going to use also is tangible. Do you measure improvement in tangible ways? Are there benchmarks, or do you just know after 30 years of doing this when it feels how it needs to feel?
Mathematically and theoretically, being a student of music, there are those things that, are kind of put into play. But at the end of the day, it's just, does this feel extraordinary? Does it feel like it's the first time, And that's what I want, Sometimes I get into conversation with the band when we're doing production rehearsals, and I'll tell them the loudest thing that the audience is going to hear tonight is the silence between those two notes you just played. And they look at me like cockeyed sometimes, like, what do you mean? And I'm like, think about it for a minute, Dynamically, we have to explore dynamics that the audience they shouldn't know that. Maybe a lot of them aren't musicians. But it's our job to take a look at all the details that are kind of like, hidden from them. Because all I want that audience to do is go, oh, my God, this is breathtaking.
Good stuff. Al Petrelli from Trans Siberian Orchestra in Wichita, December 6th. So what's happening with the band now? When do you start to really gear up? Well, I'm just curious because with a production like this, it doesn't happen if you get together, the day before, probably.
No, sir. Now, we've all been doing sectional meetings and groups. The guitar players have been, on Zoom, going over ideas. I'm explaining what parts and songs we're doing. Same with the keyboard players and singers. Everybody's doing their homework because when we get to Omaha, Nebraska, and that's where we rehearse for about 3.5 weeks, That's not where you learn the song. That's where you learn to articulate the song properly with the production. And we will run that show twice a day, every day for, a good, well, like I said, a little over 3 weeks, so that when I hit the deck in Council Bluffs opening night, it's a perfect first show. All right. But when I come to see you guys, which is, I don't know, about 3 weeks later, it might be my 25th show, but it's your first show. And I want it to be a perfect first show for you as well. So we will run it and run it and run it. And like there's an old saying, amateurs practice till they get it perfect, and professionals practice till they never get it wrong.
Hey, you made me curious. Why'd you pick Omaha to be the rehearsal city?
A couple reasons. One, it's smack dab right in the middle of the country. Prior to Omaha, we were rehearsing down in Lakeland, Florida, and it kind of painted the bands into a corner of you can't really drive that far to get to the first show, or the second show. Omaha, we can go in any direction we want. We were within 300 or 400 miles of another community that's invited us back. And the other reason is it's one of the very few buildings in the Mid-America Center that can accommodate both bands, both sets of production being hung from the ceiling. I don't know how many hundreds of tons of stuff we got, but very few buildings can support all that weight simultaneously. So it gives us an opportunity to set both bands up, a mirror image of each other, and, no constructional fears whatsoever.
Nothing like a Trans Siberian Orchestra show. Al Petrelli, their lead guitar player, has been our guest. Al, we really appreciate your time.
Always, my brother, and I appreciate yours. All my best to your family. Have a wonderful holiday. And we'll compare notes in a couple months and see where we are.
You bet.
Thanks.
All right, Al Petrelli, they'll be at the Intrust Bank Arena on December 6th.